what's up, my ninjas? I'm STRYDENT, and today we are reviewing the SH Figuarts Kamen Rider Number 1, aka Ichigo, and Cyclone, which is his bike. If Batman and Superman and Spider-Man are amongst some of the most iconic superheroes in the world, Kamen Rider is right up there with them. Ichigo, the first one. Almost every other country outside of maybe the US knows who he is, and they know who Ultraman is. They're up there. They're like, you know, Spider-Man and Superman. Super recognizable icons in their own right. Ichigo starts the tradition of the 32 riders that we have now. And SH Figuarts kind of had the task, and they've had a lot of practice with bringing Ichigo to life in figure form. And it's the kind of thing where they show their skill level and their pride when it comes to, you know, these characters, because these are the characters that they were making their bread and butter off of, you know. The various lines that came right before SH Figuarts, and then when SH Figuarts started, it started with the Kamen Rider, the first version of Ichigo from the remake, and I think that was in like 07. So anyway, today we're going to take a look at this awesome set, and I'm going to tell you the pros and the cons, and why, for me, it's kind of a big deal that I didn't think was going to be a big deal, you know? This is one of those things that goes back to my childhood growing up. So, yeah, sit back, relax, and you already know the drill. We're going to go over this. So when you have a character like Kamen Rider Number 1 here, Ichigo, there's a lot riding on how well the figure is represented, getting across all the, I guess, how well the character is represented in figure form is what I'm trying to say. You know, if you miss a little bit of something, it throws off the whole experience. And this is a guy with a legacy that starts in 71 and has been going almost non-stop till now. I mean, there's been 32 riders. And this isn't to count the ones that they've, you know, that are redos of the same character, like the US Masked Rider versus the Kamen Rider Black RX. So, you know, if they did something just a little bit wrong, it would really show and really screw up the character. But you know how they do. SH Figuarts is no slouch. They don't slack on these things. They make sure that you get the full experience with the character in figure form. This version of Ichigo is the one they refer to as Shin Ichigo, because this is what he looks like in most of the team-ups that you've seen, because there was a point where this was the look, with Nigo looking just like this with red gloves and I think one stripe. He might actually have 2 stripes on the sides of his legs, the sides of his arms. But anyway, everything is masterfully reproduced. I mean, I didn't really think way back when that I wanted this figure in, let me rephrase that. As an adult, I didn't think I wanted this figure. As much as I love Kamen Rider, this is not my favorite look for the character. But once I got him in hand, much like the survive modes for the Ryuki riders, once I had him in hand, I was like, damn, this actually looks good. There's little things like the black joints in between on the ankles and wrists that break up the silver, because the gloves are supposed to be completely silver, as are the boots. But, you know, that's nitpicking because it is an action figure. Now, they could have been smart about it and given us silver pegs or white pegs or gray pegs or something, but, you know, they gave us black, and it's not so bad. It doesn't really stand out that much. Sometimes it just looks like shadow. But everything else, the 2 greens, the different green on his helmet versus what's on his chest, it looks right. There's no slop. The effect piece looks amazing. I was actually surprised at how good the effect piece looks. Considering that, you know, they didn't give Faiz an effect piece, and Faiz actually had an effect in the show. Whereas Ichigo, I mean, he didn't get an effect until much later in the series, you know what I mean? I like the fact that, I shouldn't even say I like, they did a good job with the proportions of the figure, because he looks more the costume looks more form-fitting. Excuse me, wow. It doesn't feel like he just has this huge catcher's vest on top of tights, you know what I'm saying, like a tracksuit. It actually feels like the size of the padding on his chest, it looks organic, and it looks like it's the right size for his body type, and I like that. There's something just so uniquely old school about this design, and it works. He still looks badass when you have him up against, you know, more complex designs or more complex designed characters, and I like that. It's like it takes you back to the time when writers would just cut the shit out of something or kick the shit out of something or punch the shit out of something, and they didn't play around with all the fancy special effects and the 50 different modes and all that crazy shit. They just beat the shit out of bad guys in the name of justice, and that's what I like. The shocker sword. He's got his shocker sword. Looks good. It almost looks like a pimp cane, but with a blade in it. But it's well done. It's real simple. He holds it really well. Paint, masterfully applied. No complaints. The little eagle on the handle is sculpted perfectly. Just nothing wrong with it. And it's funny because you would think with designs this deceptively simple, there's a lot of room for them to fuck up and make things look, you know, crappy. Doesn't look crappy. Nothing looks crappy. It all looks good. Surprising, you know. I hope that, and I'm assuming it won't be a problem, but when I get the original Ultraman, that, you know, will have similar feeling. Even when you have Ichigo up against, you know, fancier designs, like I said earlier, like this Marvel Legend right here, is Iron Man. He doesn't look stupid, you know, and that was one of the things I felt that would happen having this old school version on the shelf near, you know, the newer designs. But he still looks like very much like a superhero, very capable because of how dynamic the articulation is. And I'm not going to do articulation in this video because it's the same as most of the riders, and it's exactly the same as 95% of the different Sentai figures that they've done, Super Sentai stuff. So I've reviewed all of those, and you guys can check that out. But it looks powerful, it looks fast, he doesn't look overblown as far as his musculature goes. I'm really happy with the sculpt and the paint of everything on this guy. And you would think that with a figure like this, that's two parts, that they would skip somewhere because it's such a simple design. Nothing was skipped on. Another thing to note is that there's a lot of subtlety in the design, and you only get to notice it when you look at the figure. You know, you have the figure in front of you. You know, when you watch the show, there's a lot of things that don't really come across because you only get to see what they want you to see. You don't get to see a lot of the imperfections. I mean, I guess if we watch now, since we've seen so much better, you know, more fancier superhero stuff and more modern stuff where they spend more money, you'll see the flaws, you know, zippers and costumes, wires, you know, times when they use dummies instead of using actual actors. But I mean, when you have the figure in hand where everything looks perfect, you can't see zippers, you can't see, I mean, you have it in 3 dimensions and you can't see these things, you realize how unique of a design this character is and how much this design influenced so much of what was to come. Now, this pack was filled to the brim with stuff. He had a shitload of accessories. Every last one of them is pretty useful, and I'm going to get into them. I'm glad that this was the case because it's such a simple design once again, and it's a character that didn't do very much in terms of gimmicks and stuff. But here is your rider kick, the infamous, or you know, the famous rider kick effect part. Here are your different hands, including not including the pair that he has on. You've got holding things hands, you've got fists, you've got the gesturing hands, and then you have an actual chopping hand, which is pretty dope. Then you have the relaxed hands, which is what I have on the figure right now. It's a nice selection of hands. when you're looking at the figure in the box, you can't even see where the hands are. So you kind of are, I was skeptical, like, doesn't he come with extra hands so he could ride the damn bike properly? He comes with an extra ascot piece that's kind of flowing in the wind, as well as the shocker sword. And it has the shocker eagle head as the handle. It's like the pimp cane from hell. Then you have the wings and the extra handlebars for your Cyclone. And these, strangely enough, they're not rubbery. They're just like the other ones. So I guess they're just replacement in case you use the ones that are on the Cyclone. And of course, you have the Cyclone itself, which is a pretty retro or old school rider machine. I mean, it's the rider machine that started the craze, you know what I mean? And it's very well done. And of course, you know, it's a 2-pack, so you got the figure. The figure is masterfully done. There's not too much to talk about in terms of what is lacking, because there's nothing lacking. They did a really good job. But I'm going to talk about the Cyclone for a little bit. There's a stand, a clear stand, that you can put on the back wheel to get it to stand up properly. The kickstand works fine for me, but you know, if you want extra stability, you've got it with that. I use it for some of the other bikes I have. But the Cyclone itself, it's a beautiful machine. Very well painted, very well sculpted. There's like every detail that I saw on the show, it's here. I kind of want the I think it's the new Cyclone? No, it's the original Cyclone. The one with the 6 pipes in the back. I always loved that design. Shit, I would almost love to have the SIC version. I just don't know what the build quality is of those things. But you're seeing all these details that are well done. Tampos everywhere. The red, white, and black is a very striking color scheme that you don't have to worry about blemishes, because it's not quite just blank white. It's more of a pearlescent white. As you get close to it, you can see there are lots of other details that are brought out with subtle paint detailing, like on these lights. Nice sculpt work in the spokes and the different wires for the brake system. It's just really well painted. It's just well executed. I'm sorry it's late. It's been a good day, but a very hectic day. But I really was impressed, because I was this is something I wanted, but I was afraid to pull the trigger because I didn't know what the quality of the thing would be like. So, you know, some things were answered, and I'm going to get to them shortly, you know, in me buying this set. But, you know, I have to say that for what you get in the package, it's well done. Nothing looks sloppy. It looks like every single piece of this set was done with care. It was done with pride. And because it's such a simplistic character who goes back so far and who's inspired so much, they paid attention to everything, you know. Chain looks good. Every little piece just looks good. And the fact that it's distinguishable, that makes me extremely happy. And it's show accurate, you know. So props to them for that. I love it. I love just how sleek the thing is, you know. I've always liked that about movie and TV vehicles. You know, there were always shows like that growing up, like Street Hawk, I think he was called. You had Knight Rider, you had Viper, you had Airwolf, you know, Thunder in Paradise. And, you know, this kind of harkens back to that. Well, it reminds me of that. This is why I loved those things, you know. But like I said, the details on this guy is just, whew, right down to the Shocker logo on the front. Very beautiful thing. But it's not all lollipops and rainbows and fucking unicorns and shit. I do have some problems and nitpicks to point out. Now, the bike itself, these bikes typically are fairly expensive. Most of the rider machines are fairly expensive. They go from $30 to $40 on the short end, the low end, and then they go up to like $60 to $70 on the high end. Now, I collect Maisto bikes, and most of the Maisto bikes are die cast. Lots of die cast, with little bits of plastic thrown in, and then there's rubbery, plasticky kind of wheels. More on the plasticky side. The the spokes tend to be metal. The arms tend to be metal. A lot of the connection points are metal, die-cast metal. Now on the Cyclone, the arms and the spokes on both wheels are plastic, a very brittle plastic. To be honest, the whole bike feels extremely light. Now, on all my Maisto bikes, the construction of those things feels heavy, and they feel substantial, and when you drop them, they don't shatter. And I never feel like I've got to be super careful with this thing, because if it falls, it's going to die. It doesn't matter what type of bike it is. I'm showing you naked bikes because there's the least amount of crap on them. They don't have a large body or like a kit on top of it, much like the Cyclone has. So they're close in size, especially the boot. And nothing. I don't have any issues. And the paint looks good on top of the die cast. The body of the Duke is all metal. There's little bits of plastic woven in there, but it's all metal. This guy, all brittle plastic. I'm talking like the same brittle plastic that feels like the chest portion of your various SH Figuarts. Yet, the Maisto bike is substantially less expensive than, a rider machine. Even when the rider machine is a retro bike that doesn't look that good in comparison to some of the newer bikes, even when they don't look that good in comparison to these bikes, the detailing, the paint, even though it's well done, it's still not as well done as this, with chromed out parts, with metal, with plastic mixed in there where you need it, where they used metal in spots where you knew that the screws could kind of, if you screw it in too tight, it could actually break plastic instead. You've got metal pieces. Not everywhere, but you do have metal in most places. On this guy, it's all plastic, brittle plastic. And, it's one of those things where I've been wondering about this. A lot of the bikes that are, they belong to fancy characters from anime or manga, or, especially rider machines, they're expensive. I mean, these bikes I had were like $8 bikes, $8 to $10. I paid a little bit more because I bought them on eBay, so I had to pay for shipping. But you look at what you get, and I love bikes from an aesthetic point of view and just from a performance point of view, I'm not riding anymore, and I'm not gonna ride anymore, probably ever again. But, I still love the aesthetics of, motorcycles. One of my best friends, he makes motorcycles, so it's awesome. We sit there and we geek out about this stuff all the time. And both of us have collected Maisto models, both cars and bikes, for most of our lives. And there's no way that you can convince me that a rider machine is better quality than these. This is why I had the epiphany that I explained to you guys, where you should probably just get these and use these for your bikes, for your, Kamen Riders, and just get them in colors that match your whatever rider, and you'll feel better. Your wallet will feel so much better because you get way more bike and you spend like so much less money. And a lot of times, especially as of late, with me having kids and such, and having a family, it feels better to get an awesome design for less money and not break the bank. So, this is something to think of. It's a problem for me. It may not be a problem for others, but the build quality of the rider machines does not match Maisto's various models. Now, all that being said, the Cyclone is pretty cool still. It has some pretty cool, I don't want to say they're effect parts, but they're more like add-on pieces. In the show, whenever Ichigo needed more height on his jumps to do something, awesome with his rider kick, or to dodge something, those little wings would shoot out of the sides, and it would kind of help him direct his, his sick jump, quote unquote. So you can imagine all the setups with a guy who jump kicks shit to death. You know what I mean? He gets a jump, glides a little bit, jumps off the bike, and then comes down like a freaking bullet made of justice on the bad guys that he's fighting. And it's awesome. I mean, it's really cool. And the fact that they, you know, represented that with this figure and this version of the Cyclone is pretty awesome, because it's something that we saw him do. These are the kind of things that, once again, they're reasons why you get this. Now, I should have said in the nitpicks and problems portion that I didn't pay the full price. I never buy these things at full price. I've learned my lesson since years ago when I first started collecting Fi stuff. Always wait, shop around, find it for cheaper, and I did. And that makes this set worth it. I think I got the entire set for like 30 bucks, maybe a little bit less than that. I think it came out to 30 something because of shipping. But when you use the two together, the way that you saw in the show, it really, really, really brings you back. You know, I felt like a kid while I was shooting all this stuff, because I remember being a kid and having to use, you know, G.I. Joes and such, and Cops figures as my Kamen Riders back in the day, because where I lived, we lived in Jersey, I couldn't get a hold of this stuff, because I learned about Kamen Rider in the 80s, the mid to late 80s, because that's when my dad introduced this to me. And, you know, they had been, I want to say they were just about to fall into, you know, the 90s era riders by the time I was learning about Kamen Rider. So the guys that I was watching, which were like Ichigo and Sky Rider and Stronger and stuff, you couldn't get toys for them anymore. So, you know, at least not easily. And this was before the internet was the internet, you know, like the way we know it. So pretty much I had to pretend. So now seeing this in full effect, you know, 3 dimensions, looking screen accurate, I'm a little besides myself, like, damn, this is pretty dope to have. You know, I know some collectors who've been doing this for a while will say another Ichigo, another Cyclone, blah, blah, blah. It's still awesome for those of us who didn't, you know, stock up on that stuff. So, you know, the Cyclone, it's definitely a win if you can get it for, you know, at a decent price. I managed to get lucky and get it at a decent price, which makes this more of an awesome find for me. It's someone that is important if you are a fan of Kamen Rider, because without him, we have no Kamen Rider. He is where this all begins, so you gotta have some kind of representation of him in your collection. Now, if only I can find the first version of Ichigo and the Cyclone at a decent price, and by decent I mean under, you know, 60 or 50 bucks, because that was the first modern SH Figuart. Actually, it's the first Figuart. Like I said earlier, though, the extra handlebars that you get are just, I guess, replacement handlebars, just in case, you know, anything was to happen to your figure. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of a comparison so you guys could see him compared to the only other version of Ichigo that I've ever had, which is the Kamen Rider The Next movie realization figure from the SIC line. And I have him with a custom bike. I mean, it's not really a custom, but it's not a actual rider machine. But once again, it was a cheaper find. I gave him and Nigo the same bike. But as you can see, everything that was, I won't say everything, because the version that the next is, or the first, I'm sorry, is based off of, is the Sakurajima version of him, which was when he wore all green and black, and it looked more like a jacket and less like tights. You know, he looked more like a biker and less like a superhero. He's just darker altogether. But a lot of, you can still see the details that came from the previous version of the character. All of that is still here on this version of Ichigo, and it looks awesome. So, you know, it's cool that you can get a serious version of the character and you can get a, you know, old school kind of whimsical version of the character, you know, at the same time. So, anyway, bottom line. Bottom line is, this is the guy that started it all. SH Figuarts captured everything about him that you could possibly want to see in this version. They also have offered other versions of the character, like what I just showed you, and, you know, there are other SH Figuarts versions of Ichigo and Nigo, as well as other SIC versions, and you know, the other, like I said, Figuarts or what's the other thing, Sochak Henshin and stuff. And you know, whichever one suits your wallet, you need to have him involved. You need to have a version of, you know, Kamen Rider or Masked Rider 1 in your collection. It's just, especially when it's this well done. People will find ways to nitpick, truly nitpick, and I've seen other reviews where they did nitpick a lot, but to be honest with you, he's not lacking. He's not lacking anywhere. It's a very good figure. It's almost a perfect figure. I think the only issues that keep him from being a perfect figure, and it's an issue that plagues many of these style of Figuarts, is some parts, like in his legs, they're either too stiff or the leg joints and up in the hip kind of pop off if you turn it too much. Which, you know, they're kind of made that way, but it shouldn't happen at all, you know. But besides that, this is just an amazing figure. You'd be an idiot to just pass this up if you found him for a decent price. So pick him up if you can. Anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. And I will catch you on the next video. Peace outside.